Hi there, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Cloud-Based Mayhem. I thought that music, a little classical version of the Pixies' Where Is My Mind? Those of you who enjoyed Fight Club, I thought that was pretty applicable to today because your mind is going to be blown after hearing this story by Paul Guschlbauer about his overland expedition, flying a bush plane with his wife from the northern tip of Alaska to the southern tip of South America. That all started... I don't take any credit for this whatsoever, but I tell you a little backstory. So back in 2009 or 10, can't remember, I think 2010, was sailing from Mozambique down South Africa, down the East Coast around Cape of Good Hope with a buddy, Jake, who's a bush pilot up in Alaska. It was just the two of us. That part of the world is even more famous than Cape Horn for shipwrecks. You get this super strong northerly current coming out of the Mozambique Channel, and you get these southwest busters that come up from Antarctica, and huge seas. Very, very commonly get more than 80-foot seas there. Lots and lots of shipwrecks because there's not a lot of places to hide. You got, like Durban and East London and a few ports. But anyway, pretty harrowing trip. Big seas, a lot of wind. And Jake was sicker than a dog. He was really suffering. He's a bush pilot up in Alaska, not really a mariner, and but he was an awesome co-pilot there and great crew member. And then we spent some time in Cape Town and then continued on up to the Cape Verdes. He was with me for that whole time. And we talked a lot about big plans and big adventures and, dreams on that trip because we had a lot of weeks together, just isolated on a sailboat. And he talked about flying a bush plane from Alaska down to South America, and I kept encouraging him. I was like, dude, you got to do that. That just sounds amazing. Oh my God, what a sick trip. And then fast forward a whole bunch of years, and Paul Guschlbauer and I got to know each other in the 2015 X-Alps. And then when I started thinking about the Alaska project, I'd been thinking about it at that point for many years, but looking for a partner. Some of you have heard this story, but was really wanting to do it with Paul, and we weren't able to do that because of Red Bull in a weird way. That's another story. But that winter, he started telling me about, that he was getting his, small pilot's license. And I was like, what, in Austria? Why would you? No, you can't do it there, man. You got to do it in Alaska. Anyway, you guys have heard this story. I introduced him to Ken, who was my kind of fixer and the bush pilot, our main support for the Alaska project. And he was the guy that was flying around the crew, the film crew. And Paul did a lot of flying, but he had basically just gotten his sign off right before that project started. By the end of the project, he had like more than 300 hours. And this whole dream of Jake's fly from the northern tip of Alaska down to the southern tip of South America really took hold with Paul. And then he got married, and I'll let him tell you the rest of the story. But your mind is going to be blown. What an amazing adventure and journey. And I think they flew through 13 countries, but I'll let him tell you all that. So prepare to be wowed. This is not much of a paragliding story, but certainly ties into paragliding and ties into just freedom and just bitchin' adventure. Super cool. Very, very, very inspiring. I'm pretty envious. On the last show, I mentioned a little bit of housekeeping here for a bit. On the last show, I mentioned that we are leaving Patreon. That is happening. I appreciate all your feedback. Everybody was pretty psyched about that, and everybody said they'd switch over that I heard from. So haven't had time to do that. We just did a big mission out to Santa Barbara. I'm out here for a month to train. So I've been kind of busy dealing with snow at home. We've had a massive February, and then getting the family out here to Santa Barbara to train for a month. So I haven't had time to switch us over and have the whole subscription service on the website and everything, but that will happen shortly. Those of you who are on Patreon, just stick with it for a bit, and we'll get that switched over. So I'll announce how that's all happening in a future podcast. The other bit of news I forgot to tell you about last time, when I was down in Colombia, spent quite a bit of time with Hugh Miller. I've done quite a bit of stuff over the years with Cross Country Magazine and Ed Ewing, and they're pretty psyched to be the publisher of the book. We've been talking about doing this for a while. Once we get to 100 episodes of the podcast, we're going to do a kind of a Tools of Titans book about the podcast. So each chapter will be broken down into certain categories like risk and safety and all the things we talk about on the show. and kind of have, whoever's really tapped that topic the best, and probably multiple per chapter, but try to put it together in a really organized way. So it'd be a, very good instructional book, kind of the best of the best from the podcast. So once we get to 100 episodes, which will be by my math right after the X Alps, which will be perfect, I'll need some time to unplug and just rest and recover. So that'll be about when I'm writing that, and hopefully we'll get it out in kind of early 2020. So psyched that Cross Country is taking that on. We're kind of all dialed in for that, and they're obviously really good at publishing, so I'll hand that off to them. But so stay tuned. Reminder too that many of you ask about the music on the show, that Where Is My Mind that opened this one. You can find the Spotify playlist for all the music we have on here on just do a search for Cloud-Based Mayhem, or go on the website cloudbasedmayhem.com, and you'll find that Spotify link. That is it for housekeeping. Psyched to be out here in Santa Barbara. I'll be doing a couple shows live over the next few weeks here with people that are flying around this part of the world. And I've got a whole bunch of great stuff lined up with Maxine Bellaman, who just wrote that great book, Performance Flying, and a whole bunch of other great guests coming up. So keep your ears tuned to future podcasts and enjoy this amazing talk with Paul Guschlbauer about his Overland expedition with Magdalena, his wife, and a little bit at the end about the X Alps. Little teaser. Enjoy. Paul, I am super stoked to have you on the show to talk about this thing. I was following you, of course, on Instagram the whole way down there, and I've actually kind of felt like I had a little bit invested in this because, your friend Jake and I spent a lot of time on my boat years ago, sailing from South Africa, from Cape Town up to the Cape Verdes, and this was kind of his dream. And then you guys, then this all came together a few years later for you, and so just must be totally thrilling. I thought where we might start that makes sense is just to describe, for those that didn't watch you, which I can't imagine, I think everybody did, but for those that didn't see what you've just completed, give us the kind of resume version of what you did, and then we'll go from there.
Okay. Well, hi, Gavin. I'm happy to talk to you and to tell you a little bit about that project that I did. It's already my second time on your show, which is great. I'm happy to see how it develops. It's really cool. It's good for every pilot that you're doing this. It's really a positive thing. Back to the project. Well, it was a little bit a different kind of idea, and the idea was to use my little Piper supercub, which is a bush plane, and which is built and designed in the 40s, 30s, 40s of the last century, and so it's very old plane, very slow plane, and fly it from the most northern tip of Alaska down to Patagonia, so all the length of North and South America, following the mountains, of course. Like, there's lots of mountains in Alaska, and then there's the Rockies, and then the Andes start at some point. So it's a very mountainous project as well, mountain flying project. And of course, I brought 2 paragliders with me, a little bit of mountaineering, mountain running stuff, and my motivation was to just discover cool places on the way.
And were you, I know the answer to this, but you were with Magdalena for the whole thing, or just part of it, or how did you work that out? And also describe the plane a little bit more. I think people need to understand why you chose the Super Cub, and what you can bring in it. I've spent a lot of time in a Super Cub. They're pretty small.
Yeah. Okay. So, the 2 questions and the answers. Actually, the real answer, if I think about it, is for both questions the same. It's what I had and what I could afford to bring along, and it was both perfect, I would say.
Magdalena and the Cub. That's great.
Yeah. There's a lot of weirdness in that answer, but also a lot of truth. It's very, very hard to understand for people if they hear airplane flying from North to South America, it's not like it's like not the same understanding like you have,
Yeah.
because you have been in a Super Cup. People think of airplane, the minimum, like the smallest they think of is a Cessna. There is nothing smaller than that.
Right.
So, but what they usually think of is like a little Learjet.
Just look out at the clouds and then you land on a nice runway
exactly.
and after a
Yeah,
4-hour
people
nap.
ask us because they didn't see our plane. They said like, "Oh, are you gonna stop anywhere on the way still before you going down to Ushuaia?" Probably yes.
It's so funny. I remember being with Ken up in Alaska one time, and he was like, you know, a lot of these bush pilots are cruising around at like 5,000 feet. What the fuck are they doing up there? All the stuff, everything is down on the ground. You know, you never want to be more than 100 feet off the ground. You know, and I remember flying with him, just getting a whole new appreciation. Like you're flying on the ground all the time. That's where you see stuff. You know, why would you go any higher than that? And he always makes fun of all those guys up there. Like, what the fuck are they doing up there?
Yeah. No, I totally wanted to do that, and I tried to do that as much as I could, but of course some regulations and
Sure.
some things I couldn't do it. But so the Cub is the plane that I bought 2 years ago in Alaska, and it's an typical Alaskan bush plane. It's small, but it's very robust. It can go to places that you couldn't even think of that an airplane could land, because it has big tires, strong gear. But yeah, on the other hand, it flies very slow, because if something flies slow, it lands short usually. And it's for its size, it carries quite a lot of weight, but on the other hand, it's not a lot of weight that it can carry. It's basically me and Magdalena, my wife, who we'll talk about in a second. And then we could bring, if we had full main fuel tanks, besides that, we were allowed, like legally, to bring around 20 to 30 kilograms, which is like 100 pounds
Wow.
extra weight. So besides that, we couldn't always only fly with the main tanks full. So I had another double set of the same tanks again. And if we filled all those up, we were, of course, way over the maximum weight from the beginning on, without even putting any weight in it. So it was always a big challenge of weight. And a lot of weight makes also a plane not fly that good anymore, but that didn't matter. Sometimes I was not always pushing the limits. But the other thing that's even more important, I think, is that I did it with Magdalena, my wife. It was great that we did it together. Many people might think, you're going a big adventure, and you're doing this in a small plane. How could you hang out with your wife all the time? I think we just saw it as a real project, like a work. And it was a long project, 6 months. It was only the time that we were really traveling. There was 2 months of preparations before. And I think in the end, if I would have done that in any different way, our relationship would maybe not even exist anymore. And like this, it's even better than it was before, and it was really challenging for both of us. But it was the perfect way to do this, because we will get to that point that money was a big issue as a paragliding pilot. To fly a plane down to South America is not something you would easily think about. But like that, doing this with my wife, of course, that saved a lot of money too. And in the end, it was just perfect.
Talk about some of the challenges, and then I'm trying not to ask two questions at a time, but I keep doing it. How much did it cost for the whole project? If you could shed some light on that, because I'd be fascinated. I know you burn. What is it? Is it 5 gallons an hour. How much fuel do you burn? So how much fuel did you burn on the whole project, and what does that cost?
Well, this is a very sensitive point. The whole fuel spending and money spending thing. I've learned that on the way as well, especially with paragliding pilots, and especially with not US paragliding pilots, because citizens maybe they're more used to big trucks and stuff like this, but there's also a big group of people out there that think that it's very uneconomic to fly an old airplane around, especially as a paragliding pilot who likes to fly without any wasting any energy and putting out a lot of how do you say gases.
Yeah.
Atmosphere. But so yeah, to come to the facts, I spent around 7 gallons per hour, and if you do a little bit of math behind that, it comes down to pretty much the same amount of fuel that I use for per mile. The fuel, how do you say that in English? Mileage.
Yeah, miles per gallon.
Like a normal car. So looking at it like this, it wasn't that bad of an impact. We all travel, and if we travel with big jets, we even make a lot worse thing to the environment. But back to the numbers. I spent in the end around, I guess it was around $12,000 to $14,000 on fuel on that trip.
Wow, that's way less than I thought it would be. Huh. Cool.
Yeah, it was not that bad.
Yeah,
I would say.
Sure.
But there's one thing that is very important. Like anybody who is listening to that should, and if he has a globus, how do you call that? Globus in English. Globus?
Global?
Maybe? You know, the world map that you have.
Oh, yeah.
Looks like a world.
A globe, yep.
You should take that and just have a look at what we did on that globus, because that is the only way I figured that you can really see how big this distance is. Like, it's incredible far. If you're looking at the whole world. So yeah, that looking at it like this, it wasn't that bad of an expense. Of course, I had to buy the plane at some point. I had to build it, like rebuild things, put the right instruments in to be able to fly through all those airspaces, and have the right equipment to be safe on a trip like this.
Paul, what was the total distance you flew? Because it wasn't just, you didn't just start at the northern tip and go to the southern tip in a straight line. You had a really, really good adventure, and you came here in Sun Valley and we paraglided for a week, and then you went to Burning Man, and you hopped around and really tried to see a lot of places in that 6 months. So what was the distance? Do you have all that? Do you have those statistics?
I have it an estimate in my head right now, but I wouldn't say okay, that's the exact number.
Yeah.
But the direct line, let's start from there, from Barrow, Alaska to Ushuaia in Argentina, is 18,000 kilometers. So that would probably be 14,000 miles or something like that.
Gosh.
And we almost followed that basic line, I would say. I mean, of course, there was a little bit of going back and forth, but the only real not going out of the straight line was basically going to Colorado to Telluride, and then going back out to California and via Reno. It was the only this deviation kind of. Otherwise, we went straight down, and then what we did, we went like a third of South America back up to land and park the plane at Andy Hediga's little airport in La Cumbre, close to Cordoba. So I would say it was a total of 25,000 kilometers.
Wow. In 6 months, I need my calculator. So what about what distance would you do every day?
Yeah, we tried to, like, if we went flying again, we did like 4 to, in South America a little longer, but 4 to 6 hour flights. So that's up to 800 kilometers. 500 miles, I would say, average 500, a little bit more. So this is what we tried to do if we really want to get going to the next place. And it is kind of a challenge to know, okay, if you want to really get down there, you have to go at some point, because so many places are so tempting to just stay and enjoy and get in deeper into the country and like get to know the people better, and you find a perfect flying spot, you want to go fly there all day long. I mean, it's a compromise. It's always a compromise. If you look at all those places that are on the way through all North and South America, you could spend a lifetime just checking them out. I mean, you know it from sailing around the world so many times. You could do that forever as well, I guess. You could just like, okay, this is a cool place. I will really want to get to know it. I'm going to stay here for 2 months and then move on or something like this. So yeah, it's a balance between really want to get this done. I want to reach my goal and not to get lost in like just the adventure on certain places.
Now that you're done, and we're going way off my planned route here with questions, but that's just fascinating to me because I think of it as a lot like sailing. You know, it's what I learned sailing was that, you know, that the only speed that it was reasonable to do it at was very, very slowly. You know, when I hear people say, okay, I'm going to circumnavigate in 2 years, I say, God, you're going to miss everything. You know, that's not nearly enough time. In retrospect now, after you and Magdalena are home and you've parked the plane, do you wish you would have taken more time, or was it really, I mean, I know a big part of that was just the economics.
Definitely economics was a big part of it, but I think, for this trip, I would not take more time. It was just right, because right now I'm kind of like, I can't even, how do I say? I mean, you either take 5 years or you do it in half a year. I think that's like the only ways to do it.
Right.
Because now I'm back, and we focused on getting to the goal. I mean, this was a project was for me to make this happen, you know, and this is what I achieved. And I didn't want to just travel. It was not just only a travel and enjoy project. It was really, I really also wanted to challenge myself. And I really, on every aspect, I went to my personal, like, maximum performance that I could do. I mean, many people told me, well, how was the holidays for 6 months, you know? And I'm like, okay.
That's just not Paul Guschlbauer. They don't know you.
I'm kind of happy that they got this impression, because it seems that I made good photos or something.
They were amazing.
On the way. But for me personally, it was really challenging. I mean, only one, or I can give you many examples, but one is also, you know, that combination of trying to fly a paraglider wherever I go on a higher level than just flying down a mountain, and then on the next day flying to a completely unknown place that I've never heard of before, that I have to prepare really in detail to focus on the route, on I don't know, the weather, like everything. It's challenging, you know. That one example is definitely when we arrived at your place in Idaho, like you wrote me that message that this is the day of the cross country day of the year, and we're gonna fly 200-kilometer triangle the next day, and I was just, like, for the first time in my life, flying that little airplane through the high mountains of Idaho, the backcountry, when it was super hot every day, and it was a lot of things for me to learn, like, with that airplane, when it's super hot, you don't easily fly over 6, 7, 8,000 feet, and that was a big challenge. And the next day I arrived there, and you're at 6 or 7 in the morning. You just
let's go flying.
We're going for the cross country triangle. You have to be ready. And I had no idea where I am, what's going on. What is 5,000 meters and or whatever. It was that was the big challenge of it. It was a lot of things in a half a year, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm gonna ask you about some of those scary moments and the biggest challenges and stuff, but and that was an amazing day here. That was the best day of the year we had. That's why I was so excited that morning. I was like, we got to go, man. We got to go. That was really incredible. What a day. But when you think, when you came up and supported Dave and I on the Alaska project, that spring, you were really just getting into flying, as I understand. You're just really learning. That was 2016. And then you just bit off something that I think most bush pilots would, maybe dream of, but, most obviously will never do it. What was, before you and Magdalena set off from Ken's house last June, what were the biggest fears? What were the biggest kind of like trepidation about the whole thing? Was it mechanical? Was it personal? Was it just the unknown of, like, I think of all the things that I just don't have a clue about. Like, I do from a boat standpoint. I don't know how they change with a plane, but like borders and, the drug problems in Mexico or whatever. What was it that was kind of like, ooh, I don't know.
Yeah, there was so much, like pretty much exactly 3.5 years ago, I got my pilot's license, my private pilot's license. And then I wanted to get into aerobatics. So I did aerobatics license right away. But then I figured that I have to learn just basic flying and fly a lot of hours. So I was looking for the perfect place to do that. And that's why because of you helped me a lot with that. I got to know Ken and flew there with you. And this was my first real, like, lots of hours that I could collect flying. I had no idea about bush flying at all. But Ken, obviously, he taught me a lot. Taught me a lot of things. Like, it was incredible. But the big challenge is, of course, like, I just after, basically it was right after arriving in Alaska, I already had the idea of doing this trip, which the idea I founded with Jake, and because he always talked about that, and somehow like, okay, why, let's do it together. And then he never did it. All the other people that wanted to do it with me never did it, so I ended up doing it alone. But it didn't matter. But like, you think of an idea like this, and obviously as a pilot who just flew a little bit in Austria, had just got his private pilot license, and flew in Alaska, where you don't even need a transponder or anything, or talk on the radio, like nothing. Basically, you can do whatever you want. You can really focus on flying. If then you come up with that idea, okay, I have 14 countries to cross. There are like 12 of them, 12 of them are third world countries, basically. And so only that idea of crossing all those borders, and the idea of, okay, it's only Spanish from Mexico on, and how do I get fuel? I tried to make lists in the beginning, and the lists were just like
ridiculous,
endless. Yeah. So I figured out at some point, okay, that's not the way to go. This is not, it's not going to work that I'm going to check all those points and be ready for everything that comes along like this. The only way that I could do that is like to trust that, trust myself in general, like add a little bit of trust, but get it down to, I think it was 4 points or 5 points. And those 4 or 5 points, when I tell you all those points, I will know exactly how many it were, but I wrote them down on a piece of paper. I still have it here. And I thought, okay, if I can check all those points, I can just go and do it. It will not be a problem.
Okay, let's have them. That sounds exciting. That's an exciting list.
Yeah, it was a super exciting list, but on the other hand, it was not. It was a very, very obvious list. First of all, it was about me, myself. I wanted to know that I'm ready for this, which meant, okay, I need the right licenses, which meant that I need to have a full US license. So because I only had a European license and I had a based on American license, which was very complicated. So I wanted to have a full US license. So I did a commercial pilot's license, and I knew from other stories that I read that it's very good to have instrument rating. So I said, okay, 1 point, get all those ratings. The second point was my airplane had to be ready. Okay, so I put all those, like, okay, airplane needs all the right equipment. And third point was, like I said before, it's more than half the way, like starting from Mexico on for 13 countries only Spanish speaking. So I knew that I had to be sure that I can manage Spanish radio communication, aviation related. So that was 1 point. I learned Spanish before, so that wasn't a big problem. But I wanted to make sure that I'm done with that. I'm sure that I can do that. And the fourth point was a credit card with enough money on it to get going. So I thought, okay, that was, or actually I wanted credit in case the one doesn't work. But so you think it's just a list of 4 points, super easy. You can easily prepare 4 points, but getting the licenses meant for me that I went to San Diego for almost 5 months before the trip, like starting in February 2018. I went to San Diego. I did super fast instrument and commercial ratings. Then I went to Alaska. I worked every day for a month on my airplane together with Ken to get the airplane ready. And besides that, of course, I tried to find sponsors and convince them that this is a cool project. Nobody could, of course, imagine how that project should look like and what could be the outcome for a sponsor. And like, it's super hard to sell something like this because it's very complex. It's not a super simple story like a usual project. Okay, I'm going to go to this mountain. I'm going to climb a route, this special route, and then I'm going to fly down. Super simple. But this is like includes 50 simple projects in one big project that is already not simple or something like this. It was hard to sell for sure. And then the other thing I did, I went to in January 2018. I went to Argentina to meet Andy for the first time. I also decided that this would be the final goal to reach his airport after reaching Ushuaia, and I also flew there in one of his planes and just realized, okay, my Spanish is good enough to be able to fly there. So by exactly, I think it was the 20th of June, and the plan was to leave on the 21st. It was the 22nd because we left on the 22nd.
Mm-hmm.
I was ready with those 4 points.
Wow, it's pretty tight timing. So when
Yeah.
what was I think people have a perception of what would be, like what was the thing that made you bang your head against the wall? What was either the scariest or the toughest part of the whole trip?
Looking at it afterwards now, if I see the whole project, it definitely was this the idea of doing this as a project, which means to me that I'm selling the content, and I don't have the money to do that. I never had it. I'm just a paragliding pilot. I always say, and this was definitely the biggest challenge to somehow make it happen. Like to realize this dream without having any money, basically, which sounds super strange, but. I had 2 points on the trip where I really had no money anymore. The one was at the border to Canada already. And then the second time was in the halfway down Chile. And both times I knew that, okay, I got so far and I knew that I had to get going and had to get that far to convince possible sponsors to trust in that project and let me keep going. It was really, really stressful. Like thinking of this, like just doing the whole trip without that stress in the back of my head. I think it would have been a different experience, and probably easier. But on the other hand, you never know how you would have done it if you would have done it without this like pressure that pushes.
Did you have any? Yeah, I mean, I think we could make a whole show out of just that side of it. That's tough, and maybe at the end here we'll talk about how that's turned out, or maybe how it might turn out. But did you have any, truly scary experiences, either mechanically with the plane or with any officials, or landing in a place that you shouldn't have? Any kind of like, oh God, this could be the end.
I have this strange tendency to always forget those moments. If you ask me if XR was scary at any time in the 4 times I already did it, I would tell you no, there was never anything scary, which is not true. But so in that project, probably it's a little bit the same. But thinking of it, I was super nervous. It was not dangerous at all, but I was extremely nervous before crossing the border to Mexico because everybody, almost like 99% of the people I talked to in the US said, okay, if you fly to Mexico, it's gonna be the end. The Mexicans are really strange and they're gonna burn down your plane, and it's gonna be impossible to fly to Mexico. And and then actually I went to Mexico and it was the best part of the trip. Like I love Mexico.
Yeah, Mexico's awesome.
Still my favorite country. It was before, but in that time I really got nervous and I just didn't know what's going on, and I pushed back the day of finally crossing the border a lot of times. But in the end we did it. It was all good. We flew also past all this area where there's a lot of drug drug traffic going on. It was also a little bit weird. We landed at one airport where there was like strange big like Mercedeses with dark windows, and then lots of police cars following it, like that went in and out of the airport, and we were just there parked with a little plane. The perfect drug smuggling plane probably. It was weird, but we just stopped for getting fuel. And then further down, one time that comes to my mind, I have a map in front of me, which is good. It helps me a little bit. We went to Guatemala City. Guatemala City is pretty high. The airport is pretty high. I think it's at 7,000 feet or something. And I wanted to go directly to Costa Rica to avoid two countries, El Salvador and Nicaragua, because they're not super safe. So I wanted to fly right over those countries. And the combination of having a super heavy airplane with lots of fuel on, and the high altitude airport, and the high temperature, we took off on this huge airport, which if 747 lands there, is like the main airport of Guatemala City. And we took off not towards the sea, but towards the mountains, because that was the only where the wind came from. And I took off and I flew and I didn't climb, but I didn't climb at all. And it's like, oh my God, we're just not climbing. And then there's the big high-rising buildings of Guatemala City in the front of the airport to the right, and we were basically just flying through the with that little plane. And at some point the guy, the person on the controller on the tower says, okay, now you should really climb. And I was like, yeah, I'm climbing. I'm climbing slowly. Well, in the end, it was all good. It worked out just fine, but it was very different than planned, because we wanted to take off at 6 a.m, and because of fog and officials that wanted us to change one letter on that paperwork, it took us almost until 9 until we could leave the airport. So temperatures were higher and winds changed, and so yeah, things like that. That was a little scary, but I got better at these things, and was just one of those experiences. Moving on from there, we crossed to Ecuador, and like in general, like this is an area where there's a lot of humidity. Central America, lots of low clouds. Sometimes I had to fly, like, just thinking of like now I get this story. We landed on the Atlantic side only one time, that was in Panama, and then we had to cross to Panama City, crossing to the Pacific side again. And the weather looked okay when we took off, and then it got lower and lower, and we were basically like almost skimming the wheels on the ocean already, because the clouds and the rain, everything was so low. And then at some point I had to cross to the other side of the mountains, and they're pretty big mountains. So from zero, I just climbed straight up to about more than 10,000 feet, which is pretty high for that plane, to climb over the mountains, and then just flew slalom through the cumulonimbus cloud, and then back down on the other side. So, but that was just a first little taste of what was to come with clouds and mountain flying further on. But that was also a very impressive flight. And then, of course, flying over the Panama Canal and landing in Panama City was pretty impressive.
Yeah, that's an amazing part of the world. Going through the Panama Canal was one of the highlights of going around the world. That's an impressive feature. Yeah. It's incredible. The howler monkeys.
And my plan was to fly along the Panama Canal that's why I went to the Atlantic side, and I wanted to fly down the coast and then follow the Panama Canal to the Pacific again. But because of that weather, I couldn't do it. But yeah, somehow that canal has something interesting to it. I don't know, something mystical.
It's not what you imagine either. I mean, it's really wild, even though there's this huge canal and big ships going through there, and and yet you're in the middle of the jungle. It's an interesting part of the world. What about getting through the Darien Gap? Is that not that big a deal with a bush plane? You just fly across? Because that was always one of these things that I always wanted to do by foot. But it's, there's been some pretty interesting stories about getting through that part of the world. They've never connected that highway because of the drug trafficking. And so it's pretty wild through there.
Yeah, it was planning wise about the flight. It was definitely the most challenging and exciting. Well, we together with flying down in Patagonia, this was the most exciting part, because we were looking at the weather for 2 weeks constantly every day, and the big thunderstorms just moved from the west to the east over that section. And so I had to find that one little moment that when I took off in the morning, the cloud just moves away far enough into the land, into Colombia, so I can fly through that one and the next one that is already out in the ocean, and then make it down to Colombia. So that in combination with knowing that there is just nothing except the deepest jungle underneath you was, like you said, very, very exciting. Very, very exciting. And it is a 6-hour flight in that small plane from Panama City to Cali, Colombia, which made it even more exciting.
Whoa, yeah, you got to make it.
You definitely got to make it. And if you can't turn around, you can't land anywhere. The mountains are super high. They even, when we arrived in Cali, it was super, super exciting. I have a cool photo of me standing next to the little plane, and I'm surrounded by a group of 10 people from migration, military, police, customs. And they were all already, what the hell is going on? They were already waiting for us, because they made something that is called a Código Estrella, so like a star code or something that they put on us, because we were gone from radar and radio contact for more than 4 hours flying along the coast of Colombia in a small plane.
Good thing you didn't get shot down.
Yeah, it was so weird, because of course I couldn't fly high enough to be over those high mountains, because they're pretty high, and then the weather also was super strange, and was super cloudy and rainy, and so they really got worried that we are really bad people. But we landed and we're like, yeah, cool that you're coming out, we don't have to go in and see each other. See everybody, see all those offices, they all came to see us.
Wow. Probably not something you'd get away with in Afghanistan or something. That's amazing. I mean, for sure you looked like bad people. If if I was sitting in an office and kind of tracking you because you couldn't really track you, you'd be like, okay, these guys are up to no good.
Yeah, it's but it's all how you your mental thing, and like how you approach the situation. If you know that you didn't do anything wrong, you just know it's going to take forever. If you arrive, okay, that's going to be fine. You just take it easy, and things are going to work out. They can't really do anything to you. I mean, yeah. And what if if they say, okay, they take away your airplane, or my airplane, well, then it's part of the story, and I can't do anything against it. So the key was to stay calm and just like not get how do you say, like they of course not, they can't do anything like jokes with you, but still, like, you have to take it easy and just let them do their work, and yeah, that's it.
And how much did you, I mean, because like when you came here, you got out of the plane and we went for a huge flight, and you had all your gear. I know that was part of the mission, was to do quite a bit of paragliding too. How much flying did you get in?
Well, in the end, a little bit less than I expected, honestly, because the flying was just way more exciting. The flying of the plane was way more challenging than I thought, but I flew in a lot of cool places, and I mean, I flew in every country. I flew all those famous places for sure, and how many, I can't tell you the hours, but of course, if somebody followed, and this was also one point, if somebody followed that trip, he was like, probably like, okay, he just flew the plane, that's all he did. That's not true. But if you want to make all this distance, you just think of making that distance in a car. You also have to spend a lot of time in the car to get to the places where you fly a paraglider. So this is what I keep saying. But I flew in Iquique in Argentina. I flew at your place in Mexico, in a couple of places in Costa Rica, in Guatemala. I climbed volcanoes. It was full of cool paragliding moments for sure, and mountaineering.
How do you think I saw a post recently of you training in Austria, and you were talking about that, you feel like that 6-month expedition has also really helped you prepare for the next X Alps. How do you equate the two? Because I always tell everybody the story about that time when you came out and you did a food drop for us when Dave and I were stuck at Heart Mountain. And you came out with one of Ken's friends, and he's like at $6,000 and you're at $14,000, and he calls you on the radio and he's like, "Paul, what the hell? How are you up there?" And you're like, "I'm thermaling. What, come on." And like your experience with a paraglider obviously has really benefited you as an airplane pilot, but how is it reversed? Because it sounds like you've also learned a lot about paragliding from flying your airplane.
Yeah, definitely. Let's start with that. Like, for example, in Patagonia, there was a lot of wind. We flew through really high mountains, and I think if without my knowledge of flying in the mountains with paraglider, we probably would have crashed somewhere down there, because it was just incredible. It felt like in the worst wind situation that you couldn't remember with the paraglider. It felt exactly like that. We were flying, I don't know, just straight in front of us there is a little ridge. You think it's just a little ridge. You get to the ridge and we just can't make it over the ridge. I was like, okay, I can do anything. I can just only turn around and get altitude again, like in the paraglider, and try again. So I go back. It goes up like crazy. We're like in the biggest wave kind of phenomenon down there. Ooh. Shoots back up to 12,000 feet, and then I turn around to that same little ridge, which is like super small now in front of me and only 10 miles in front of me, and I can't make it again. Jeez. Like it was just, you can't even imagine how I felt. Like I was in the middle of Patagonia. There's just nothing around for hours of flying, and you play around with a little ridge trying to make it over it. It was really crazy. And I think without that experience and that knowledge of, okay, there's always a way that you can use the wind to get somewhere, I would have never made that flight down there, because that is one thing that if people are not flying a small airplane themselves, the power of a plane like this is very, very limited. I think it's the same. I think that the comparison is totally valid between a paraglider and that plane, because the only difference is that engine is just a constant extra glide ratio that you have. In calm air you can climb, but as soon as there's a lot of sink, you will sink even with that engine or not. And also with that kind of plane, you don't take off at an airport and just fly straight to the next destination and land. You always, if there are mountains, you really have to choose your line. You have to find thermals to help you be more economic on the way, or at least that's how I always try to fly, like you said in that example before. So in general, like overall, I would say this experience, those almost 300 hours I spent flying that plane for the mountains, will help me or helps me climb paraglider as well, like vice versa. It's the same thing. Hours in the air, except for maybe jets that are at 20,000, 30,000 feet, in the mountains are experience for everything.
Did you find, like, especially in Patagonia where the terrain is big and complicated and just big, it's just huge in Patagonia. Did you find that I mean, I don't even know if it's something you were able to realize at the time or maybe now that you've been home, but did you find your kind of global understanding of the weather really increased? Like your mountain, like reading the mountain weather really was really benefited by those experiences? And if so, can you articulate how?
The cool thing about that engine that is there, like I said before, it's just that constant thing that pulls a little bit, a little bit, is that it has one big advantage. You can, like in normal mountain conditions on a thermal day, I can try things, I can go to places that I can't go with the paraglider, because if I go there, I'm probably, if it doesn't work, I'm just going to land and that's it. Then I have no other chance. With the plane, I just go there and see, okay, well, there is a big lee side, but it's pretty quiet in the direct lee. And there's even a little bit of lift. Cool, that works because I feel it in the plane. And in case it wouldn't work, I would just turn around and say, okay, well, that didn't work. I better take the other, a longer route. So playing around like this in the mountains is super cool. Like it helps a lot. It's a way to learn a lot of things, I think.
So it sounds like it has impacted how you fly a paraglider.
I think so. I mean, wherever I went in big like Iquique, I went for cross country flying, and then also with Andy, I flew and I felt like I'm flying better than before. But so I didn't feel like, okay, well, I didn't fly for a month, I probably don't fly that good anymore. It definitely felt the other way around. I felt like, okay, this is super simple for me now. So I'm sure I benefited from flying the plane down there in the mountains.
That's really cool. This next question is one that I always hated answering, so I'm going to change it a little bit. But people always ask me, what was your favorite thing of sailing around the world? And I was like, God, I can't, there isn't one thing. But what was Magdalena's favorite? If you, without asking her, if you could just guess, or maybe she's already told you, but what do you think her best experience of that 6 months was?
Wow, that's a super tough question. Because the other question people ask me all the time.
I know, but I hate that other question. You're just like, oh, I don't know. It's like, it was all good.
Yeah, it was all good, but I had to find an answer to it because, like I said, nobody's asking it. So I would have been prepared. But I think for her, it was the whole thing that it's possible to do something like this together with your partner and like go through the ups and downs. And that's just the overall thing that I think that stuck to her. Like that's what she says right now, that it was super tiring for her, but also like doing something like this, something big and stressful and everyday challenging, is what was for her. And she's very like that. She thinks a lot about things and is very quiet a little bit about things like this. So I think that was that thing that was really the coolest thing for her. But looking at places, what she thought was the best, I could just open the door and ask her probably. But she is in the other room. She doesn't. I would have to scream for her.
Okay,
but,
all right. Well,
I think one thing that was really very cool, like you said, like there's like basically there's so many things that happen. So I'm starting to think, and then okay, this and this and this. What am I gonna say now? But we both together tried to climb Aconcagua, the highest mountain of North and South America. And this was also a very, very cool experience for the two of us, and I think also for her, because I remember that moment when I had to obviously hike as slow as I ever hiked on the mountain, but I didn't.
A little different pace than you're used to.
Yeah, we had a little different pace, but that wasn't the goal to climb that mountain fast. It was just the goal to climb that mountain. So it didn't matter how much time we take between the camps. But I remember we climbed up to 5,000 meters together, and she's like, they are surrounded by all these ice walls and beautiful area, and he's like, wow, that's just the most impressive and beautiful thing I've ever seen. And for me, who is somebody who loves mountains, and I really want to share that with her, for me it was incredibly lucky moment to hear her saying that she's like, wow, this is now I understand why people go to the mountains more, you know. So maybe that was the best moment. I mean, I don't know.
I like that one. Paul, when you it's maybe too early to ask this question because I know you guys are still, you'll be processing this for a long time, but was there any has there been any real shift in who you and Magdalena are as people as a result of the trip? Has it maybe, when you think back to before you started in Alaska and now, how has it changed both of you?
It has definitely changed a lot of things, and I'm happy that you're asking this right now because I wanted to say something in general still, and I think it's could be even an answer to your question right now. One thing that I really saw, or maybe it's not the perfect answer, but it is a very important thing for me, and it for sure changed me. We flew all the way from up there to the bottom of South America, very low, like basically never higher than 3,000 feet above the ground, I would say. So, and then we also flew only when the weather was good. So we could always see the ground underneath us. And we were flying in a speed of 150 or 140 kilometers per hour, so 85 miles, around 85 miles all the time. And then you have a lot of time to see the world moving by below you, very slow. And you can see every detail, and you can see how the world changes all the time, slowly. And you get a very, very good impression of how everything is connected and how, in the end, I have to say that how small that world is, because we flew really on a straight line, basically halfway around the world. And I can tell you, like, I know exactly how every part of that way that we did looks like from above. And it's small. It's not very big. And that the world is very small, and we are so many people running around on that, and everybody is in his small little world. And then he has enough money, he gets to the jet and flies to, I don't know, from Europe to Thailand, and he gets out of the jet and he thinks he's in another world, like completely other world, because you get on a big jet, and then you the only thing you want to do is like sleep or whatever, and make the time go pass as fast as possible. So you're in that other world, and then you never have the chance to realize that there is a connection between those places, and it's not super far. It's just like, it's not another world,
right?
And and that really is a very important thought. I think that everybody should think and understand that it's a super small world that we have, and we have to take care about it. Like, as we take care about our own house or our own place, we don't mess it up. We mess around with so many things in the world, because you think, okay, well, that's in another world, that's over there, that has nothing to do with me. But it's not like that. And this is for sure something that changed my mindset about many things, and also, of course, people might say, okay, well, you did this with an airplane, with an engine. Okay, this is not the point for me. Of course, I drive a car I don't know. I take the big airplane as well. I'm not super environmental friendly for sure. My footprint is not perfect, but it's just important to understand how everything is connected, and that we don't have endless worlds only because we jump into a jet and fly to another world.
Yeah, those borders mean nothing, don't they? You went 13 different countries that are all separated by these borders, but they don't separate us. They don't separate the people, the nature, the anything. It's all, we're all part of that one
Yeah,
world.
yeah, exactly. And this is something that changed both of us for sure. We have I mean, I can say, okay, I'm doing something very different right now, but once you change your mindset, you're also changing what you're doing. So yeah, back to your question, we changed.
That's nice. I like that. Um, I got to ask this one. It's an easy one, but I imagine it's not such an easy answer. Um, you know, what next? Your plane's down at Andes. Um, for me, there was a real delineation. Like at the end of the sailing, it was like, I'm done. I'm done with that. I mean, I still love the ocean. I still love sailing, but it was time to move on. Is it time to move on, or you got other big bush plane projects?
Well, for me, starting to fly airplanes was something that I needed as a big foreign distance goal to also be motivated for XURPs. For example, I just needed some. When I first took part in the XURPs in 2011, after that I was like, okay, well, that's done for me. I took part in this. This is what I wanted, and I needed something that motivates me to work on for the future, and part of that way to that big goal for some point in the future. I can't even tell you when I want to reach it, and also what exactly it is. That's the fun thing about it. But anyway, Red Bull XURPs, all those times I took part and that I'm still taking part, is part of that way. And also this project was part of that development. And it was just one step. I have no I can't even tell you right now exactly what's my next bush plane project. I just know that I will not stop flying airplanes and not stop flying paragliders only because I did that. One thing that I'm doing right now is I found a place in Alaska in the Wranglers National Park that I want to buy, or that I'm already part owner of it, and I want to build up something like a cool base camp for people who are interested in flying bush planes, in getting to know Alaska, go paragliding, go explore more. And this is something that motivates me also for the future to show that place to more people and share that experience.
If that's in McCarthy, can we privately have a talk about that?
Yeah,
That
it
place.
is in McCarthy actually. It's 5 minute flight from 5 minutes flight from McCarthy, but you can also take a 4-wheeler, half an hour, and you're in the center of McCarthy, and it's such a cool. It's incredible.
Yeah,
I'll show you.
That's a neat part of the world. Cool. Well, we have much to discuss there. That's neat. So the short term future is the plane will come back to Alaska.
Yeah, it took me a while to decide on that. First, I wanted to sell it. First, I wanted to this and that, whatever, fly it back. But now I have decided that I'm just gonna bring it back to Alaska because it's an Alaskan bush plane, and I like Alaska, and I'm gonna have a lot of fun there with this plane. So I'm gonna send it back. Mm-hmm. I recently posted a video on my Facebook channel, flying through a canyon and touching the water.
Amazing.
And it got more than 1 million views right now.
Whoa.
Yeah, it totally got viral. It's incredible. But the problem is, people, like for bush pilots, for all those pilots, is super normal. But the comments on that video, like, it got viral, so it reached people that had no idea of this. They got super scared. They're like, he's gonna die tomorrow. This is gonna be his last flight. He has, like, it's gonna be, what if he has other traffic coming for the other side? Like, super stupid. Like, what if there's a downdraft? What if like, I can't even look at it anymore, at the comments, because it's just making me so crazy. Like, people can be so weird. This is not a super dangerous stunt. I mean, it looks crazy, and there are always risks, but there are also risks if I fly across Alaska on my own, low,
Yeah.
Like, I was close to taking that video down again, but I mean, it's stupid. Why should I take that video down?
No.
I don't do anything bad, like, really nothing. Like, there's no person around. I'm not harming anybody. I'm doing the same thing that I did 100 times in Alaska. Every day I did it. Like Ken says, why would you fly anything higher than that? The only big difference is that there's a canyon. Okay, that made it a little bit more scary, but, like, yeah. So I thought, okay, why should I care about it? But it has almost 2,000 comments, so you don't want to start looking at anything.
No, that's just a waste of time. Wow, that's exciting. That was a cool video. So that was pretty exciting. Paul, last question. We can't let you go without asking about the X Alps. This is your 5th one. You changing anything? I mean, other than you've just had this big, 6-month expedition in the bush plane, and that was obviously a lot of training, but any different approach? Because we talked about this a bit on the last show. But you're a little bit older, you're a little more mature. You've got 4 behind you. How are you approaching the next 4 months? Any differently than you have in the past?
Yeah, it is actually different. So far, I did it 4 times, like you said. I was third 3 times. I was sometimes fighting even more in front than the third place. In the end, I was third. So, and I'm not going to do this forever, X Alps. I'm not going to say right now that this is going to be the last one, but it might be the last one that I'm doing. So the only thing, like, for the mindset that changes for the mindset right now is that the only thing I really want to do is win it. Nice. So, because I was third already a couple of times, if I'm worse than that, it's also okay. But the goal should be to really be in front, and that's how I'm preparing right now as well. I'm just trying to think of all the experiences that I had, of all the experience, how I can use it and train very professionally and just be really ready for the race. I mean, yourself, you never know how it's going to go, but you can do your very best to prepare, and that mindset for sure helps me to do a good job right now in the next 4 months.
Paul, thank you. That was a super treat. I was fascinated following it. You guys did a really good job documenting it. I'm sure there'll be, a longer version of that at some point, but we'll have all the links to that in the show notes. For those of you who are listening, go check out the footage and the pictures. It's just unbelievable. But congratulations on completing such an epic project, and we'll see you here in a little bit. Thanks for the X Alps, and good luck. I look forward to racing with you again.
I'm very happy to hear those words from you, because feedback is very different. It was a very controversial project at some points for me as well. For the outside world, feedback from the outside, for me myself, it was a dream. Just I'm self-confident enough to say that. But it's good to hear. It's just good to hear that feedback, and I'm happy if people check it out. I'm gonna finish my YouTube series about it pretty soon. I did it so far. It's online until Mexico, which is already quite exciting, but I didn't get the time to do all that, to finish all that up. But that's a way to really get a good impression of how we traveled and how we adventured the last half year.
Cool.
My YouTube channel.
Cool. Yeah. Well, we'll have all the links to that in the show notes. Hey, I do have to ask you one more question then, because that just made me think of it. You did these amazing vlogs for the last X Alps. Will you do that again? And do you feel like that doesn't really get in the way of your performance?
No, I'm not gonna do that again. It was great for the last time. It even took some pressure off me. Last time it was like, okay, I'm at least gonna do my work very well. Besides the performance of during the X Alps last year, both went pretty good. This year I'm not gonna do it. I also think that maybe many pilots are thinking about it, so many other people are maybe doing it. I'm for sure not gonna disappoint my followers and those who are expecting to hear what I'm experiencing during the race, but it's not gonna be in the way of a vlog like last time.
Cool. Well, okay.
Disappointed?
Yes, they were great. I really enjoyed doing those. And when you came here and gave that talk, it was fun digging back through those and putting together that talk that we did for you with you. And that was really fun. I think it's I think it's a race that, when you're following on live tracking and everything, it really, which is great. And they do a fantastic job of that, but it misses so much. And, that misses kind of the meat and potatoes of the whole race and what's going on behind the scenes. And that was really nice to see with the vlog. And I've often just wondered, on the one hand, I can see your point that it helps and that it kind of takes your mind off being serious. And that's what we need to do to fly well. And that, that's good. It's probably a nice distraction. And at the same time, it's also, something you've got to do. So I wanted to see what you thought about that. Cause I know it's a lot of work, but.
Yeah, it was a lot of work. I mean, I had one person that was with me only editing those videos. Besides that, I constantly had to think about taking the camera with me, explaining all the time what I'm doing. So I decided for myself not to do it in that way, but there's gonna be this almost the same kind of information for people who are following me. I'm just gonna have a little bit different way to do it.
Different approach. Cool. Well, Paul, I've taken up plenty of your time. I again, super appreciate it. Thank you so much. And we'll see you here pretty shortly in Salzburg.
Yeah. When are you coming?
May 20th.
Perfect. Yeah, let's do something together. Thanks for having me on your show again.
Cool. See you soon.
See ya.
I hope you enjoyed that. Always fun to sit down with these great pilots in different parts of the world. Super inspiring. As always, all we ask for is $1 a show. If you're getting something out of the Cloud-Based Mayhem, there are many ways you can support it, either financially, through PayPal, and soon to be just directly through our website. We'll have details of that up pretty soon. But if you can't support us financially, we totally understand. This will remain free as long as we can do it. But you can support it in many other ways. You can give us a rating on iTunes or Stitcher or however you listen to your podcast. That really goes a long ways. You can blog about it on your own blog. You can post about it on social media, share it with your friends, talk about it on the way to launch. I know many of you are doing that. I really appreciate it. And another way you can support us is through our store. We've just got a whole new load of awesome Patagonia t-shirts for men and women, and a whole new box of super styly trucker hats by Recaps. Each one is totally unique. Got a whole bunch more colors that seem to be more in favor. So go to cloudbasedmayhem.com, click on the store link, and get some cool swag. That's another great way to support the show. But yeah, get behind us. We're doing this directly just through you instead of sponsors, because I just can't stand having that whole sponsor thing at the top of the show. And I want you to know that it's an authentic conversation. It's just opinions, and they're not being skewed by advertising dollars, which I think is a pretty toxic thing that's going on right now globally with all the stuff going on with Facebook and others. So anyway, we'd like to do it direct. We appreciate your support, and we'll see you on the next one. Cheers.